I don't know if anyone just heard my elbows crack, but that's what happens at 6 a.m. when I wake up. Good morning, everybody, depending on where you are. Good super duper early morning if you're West Coast. I know, Brett, I saw the comment. There's at least one West Coaster out here watching at 3 a.m. 6 a.m. Montreal time, 8 in the evening Australia time. And this is going to be fun. I finally managed, I contacted Avi Yemini on Twitter, and he said yes, which is going to be amazing because for those of you who don't know, Avi Yemini was a YouTuber, independent reporter. I suspect all of you know this by now, and now is working with Rebel Media, which is kind of interesting as well. And was recently in the news for having been detained by Australian police. Not the first time he's been in the news. He was detained way back when at the border in the US in a kerfuffle with Jim Jeffries that we're going to get into during the stream. But I want to know what's going on in Australia. Avi is definitely knows what's going on. I want to talk about a bunch of stuff and him in particular. So it's going to be amazing. I think we probably have about an hour and a half hard cutoff because typically the kids will interrupt when they need to go to bed. This morning, they're going to probably interrupt when they need to go to school. So I'm going to be drinking coffee. I'm going to try to mute it when I drink coffee because nobody likes hearing the... Okay, and let's just see who's here. 11, we got Benji Cockapoo, 11 a.m. in England, which is a very reasonable time to be watching. And good morning. That sounds, I'm reading that in an Australian accent. 7 p.m. in, I suspect that says Tokyo. Hashish Rudolph Alianakian. Arthur Magson. Okay, well, this is cool. Jim Jeffries. Wait, I need to know. I've always had questions since Jim Jeffries. That's how I came to know of Avi Yemini. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to bring in Avi. We're going to start the discussion, and it's good. Everybody knows my style a little bit. I'm not going to go into the childhood memories of Avi, but I know some things that are just going to blow some people's minds if you don't already know them, including how many siblings Avi has. Avi, good evening to you.
Good evening. You're getting straight into it with the hard-hitting questions.
Well,
yes, I have middle child syndrome.
Middle child syndrome. My sister has middle child syndrome of 5. You have middle child syndrome.
Let me finish the equation.
17.
Yeah, I was going to say middle child syndrome times 17 equals an excuse for every time I've been arrested.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question: Are all 17? I mean, I know you come from an Orthodox Jewish family, so I assume all 17 are from one marriage.
Yep.
How many
twins?
Say that again.
No twins. 20. It was 20 years. No twins. 5 miscarriages. So, do the maths. Yeah. My oldest 2 siblings were born in the same year. I don't understand. You know what? I don't understand.
I don't think it's. I don't think it's a derogatory term. They call those Irish twins. My mother-in-law and her brother, I think, were born within the same 12-month period.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is very interesting because typically, for anyone who knows this, a woman is typically unable to get pregnant while breastfeeding. So that's sort of like nature's way of making sure a woman does not get pregnant twice within, it's a short period of time.
She gets a rest.
Okay, so middle child, 17 kids, born and raised in Australia?
Melbourne, yep. So I was born the night we moved here from Sydney. My family lived in Sydney for about a year. My sister was born there, I think so. I'm the 10th child. My sister was the 9th, so 8 children were born in Israel, and then the rest of them were born here. I was born literally the night we come here. So I remember as a kid, like when we're trying to figure out how long our family had been in Melbourne. They're like, how old are you exactly now, Avi?
So, it's an interesting thing. I wonder if today, if someone who is on the verge of delivery, you moved from one part of Australia to another, so it's not, you weren't.
It's not bad. It was back then, I think it was probably a 12-hour, we had like a minibus ride. There's no time to, like I think about it and it's crazy now, but I guess they just didn't plan things around the kids. They just did life and kids came around that.
Well, I guess at that point they only had 9, or I guess they only had 8. So it was
only.
Okay, so born and raised in Australia. You moved back to Israel at some point because I know you served in the IDF.
Yes, went back to Israel when I was almost 19. I did my service there. I volunteered in the Golani forces, if anyone knows, Golani Brigade. But yeah, and then I came back home, opened a couple of gyms, and kind of fell into troublemaking.
So I know. Digging back a little bit, I know that there was some issue.
Late. It's not the morning here, by the way, so I'm allowed to have a wine.
This, if I, you know what, I want to take a screenshot. I can't take a screenshot. It's the amazing thing about the internet: coffee for one end of the stream and wine for the other. Although,
if you're talking to an Australian, it would just be a beer in the morning. No, just
yeah, I was going to say that there are ways that those two could overlap in the same time zone. What was I about to say? So I was looking back at just some news articles, and there were some incidents with the gyms that you were not incidents, but they made the news for various reasons. First of all, Krav Maga is what you were teaching at the gyms.
That was our gyms. So we had 24-hour gyms that had obviously the weight section, but it was known for the Krav Maga, the Israeli Army self-defense system.
Okay. And when do you still have the gyms or no gyms?
No, I sold them a while ago, a few years ago.
All right. And now, let's get into getting into the troublemaking business. Let's call it agitation or social awareness to be politically correct. We got Australia is not real, just that's a flat earther. $2. Australia's biggest thorn. Thank you very much, by the way. So how did you become Australia's biggest thorn?
I don't really exist. What is that?
Say, how did you become Australia's biggest thorn?
Well, I kind of fell into it because I like you said, I had those two gyms, and you know what? I wasn't really politically motivated, active. I was apathetic like most young Aussies. And all it was really was when the media here, the mainstream media or the state media, were reporting on a Israeli operation in the Gaza Strip. And it was something that I'd seen firsthand because most of my service was in the Gaza Strip. So I knew it like the back of my hand. I knew what was really happening. And I'm watching on TV how they're reporting it. And I've just gone, that's not right. And at the time, our gyms were quite popular online. And this is back, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago when, a gym that had 80,000 followers was unheard of. But we had that. And I just used that platform to kind of post my opinion about the situation. And it was okay because it was, it was a Krav Maga gym. It was called IDF training. So, it created a bit of a stir and people got involved in the robust conversation. Some people left my gym in anger. Some joined out of pride. I didn't really care. For me, I said, I justified it to myself and to everyone around saying, you know what, at the end of the day, we are a proud ex-Israeli soldier of an Israeli, Israeli army martial arts style, if you want to call it that. And if that offends you that we're going to defend Israel's right to defend themselves, then there's a door. I don't really need your cash. But then what sort of happened was I found my voice, I guess. I started making political comments on all sorts of matters. And I guess I got some constructive criticism from people that were they didn't necessarily agree with me, but they loved the gyms and they just thought maybe you're going to kill your brand. And then I opened a Facebook page in my name and the rest is history. That's kind of how I grew apart from the gym. I hated the gyms, to be honest. I woke up every morning. I woke up every single morning going, I hate my life. I hate what I'm doing. I hate the fact that, people are lazy. They expect you to train for them. I'm lazy. I can't even be bothered training myself. Why do I got to train for you? You know what I mean? And then now I wake up every morning and I'm excited. I'm excited to get out there and do the hardest thing for me at the moment is censorship. That's my biggest problem in life, which I'm overcoming slowly. And I think we're all going to overcome it at some point. It's going to have to give, but that's the actual job I love. There's nothing more than that I love than heading out to a protest, especially if they hate me, and just having a nice, gentle chat with the folk.
It's an interesting thing. The world needs all different types of people. Like, and I do a lot of live streams with Robert Barnes, who's I say something of an agitator as well, but it does definitely picks fights in a way, whereas other people don't have the stomach for it.
I honestly, the funny thing is, half these, and this is a secret, I don't tell anyone. Half the time when I go to these protests, I know nothing about the subject, nothing. But I go the night before, I just know that it's a typical renter crowd and it's all the same people, and I know that if I spend 20 minutes on the subject, I'll know more than they know, and I'll know that they have no idea why they're marching on the street, which is mostly what I'm trying to prove. Is if you're going to rally on the streets, at least understand what you're rallying for. And every single time it works out. What ends up happening with me is I go to the street, I end up wrecking them with just a few tiny common sense points. And after a few days, because my head's so involved in after it's been edited and put out and it's gone viral, and over the next few days, I kind of get really educated on the subject, not just from really listening and getting involved, immersing myself in it, that I sit down and go, damn, I wish I actually spent a bit longer. I wish I actually have the information I have now, because I would love to go back to that protest with that little bit more. So I think now I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start putting a little bit more effort into, because it's so easy to get lazy because they're so ridiculously lazy and like, you think I'm lazy to go do my job there, but the fact that I can beat them in arguments with just a couple of points that I walk in there with just shows how much they don't know about everything that they rally. To be honest, the only people that I found that really understood what they were rallying were the Hong Kongers who were rallying, and that was interesting because the only people who didn't understand what they were rallying were their opposition, which were the...
Well, it's an interesting thing. I think where you find people know more about the subject is where there's more risk for them to actually protest on the subject. So, like getting 500,000 people on the streets for climate change is going to be easy just because it takes a few catchphrases and everybody feels good doing it. Yeah. Getting people on the streets to protest Hong Kong.
That's a really good point, because I was just about to say the other group that I see tends to know why they're protesting, even though some of them may be a little kooky, and a lot of them I think are there because they're actually not, they're sensible. The media paints them as nutters, but at least here in Australia is the anti-lockdown protesters. They seem to really know, but based on what you're saying, it makes sense because they're risking everything here. This is the only protest you get in trouble for it in Australia.
When I used to do some rock climbing, we call it the sports filter. The stuff that's harder to get to, you only get the really good climbers going to. The other stuff, you get the intro level day climbers. So it's with if you're protesting Hong Kong, you're exposing yourself to risk, not praise. And so people are going to know more before they do it. Same thing with the lockdown stuff. Whether or not you agree with them, they will know statistics that you'll have to go back and double check.
Exactly. And I find even the kind of conspiracy theory ones, the theorists in that group, they kind of know stuff. You go, okay, I just need to look that up, and they're often right about certain points. It's just taken a little bit out of context. But the fact is that they're able to just give off a bunch of stats and numbers and points. In fact, where in all the other, in the climate change one, in the Australian Day one, in the Black Lives Matter ones, that one that was actually one of my most popular ones in Australia for Australia, is the Black Lives Matter one. And I really went in there with not much. I just wanted to point out one hypocrisy that they didn't know. They were here marching on our streets during a pandemic for an American, George Floyd, when at the exact in the exact same place in Minnesota, an Australian was killed by the police, but it was reverse roles. She was white.
I think her name was Diamond, and it was
Diamond, by Mohammed Noor. But none of them knew her name. None of them knew anything. Like, none of them knew anything about it. So that was all I went in with. And then later when I was, you know how I was saying before that afterwards I got kind of educated on something, I realized the whole thing was a sham. All their numbers, everything that, all the statistics that they're standing there holding big signs in Australia are rubbish. If you really want to look at the statistics, and this was what was interesting to me and why I was kind of pinching myself after going, you should have done a bit better, because you could, even though it was my most viral one, I was just like, they're holding these numbers when, if you want to look at the statistics don't work in their favor. In fact, the white people are far worse off here in Australia, at least, than the Indigenous. In fact, the Indigenous people are far better off incarcerated in Australia than in their own communities, as in the death rate in their own community here in Australia, due to numerous causes of alcohol, drugs, crime, all different factors, is far greater. They have a less shorter lifespan out on the street than they do in jail. Now that means if you're going to use statistics like that to kind of justify your rioting and looting, then really you should be rioting and looting to have them all locked up because it's safer for them. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying.
I mean, I do know what you're saying. We have a similar problem in Canada in terms of murder rate, kidnapping rate, abuse rate on reserves, and it's an issue. It's an issue, and then you know what people do to address it, what the government does to address it, is inadequate, to say the least.
Yeah, 100%.
But no, it's a legitimate point that where you have. I think it's a product of the media in any case, just making the rule of the exception and making the rule of the exception and the exception of I don't want to say the exception of the rule, but downplaying or just ignoring that which doesn't.
When you ask any of these protesters who are out there rallying for them about all these issues that aren't even factually correct, when you ask them about real issues like, you know, child molestation within those communities, real domestic violence. I'm not talking about, you know, those angry, vindictive exes. I'm talking about actual hospitalizations of women in those communities are through the roof. Statistically, it's crazy when you put it you compare it to the wider Australian community, but they don't ever talk about those issues. They never protest in support of those victims. They're just out there to feel good and look good.
There's another principle which I always go to, and it's called Parkinson's law of mundanity, which is people will spend an exponential amount of time on the easy to describe problems or the easy to discuss problems, and then not discuss the complex ones because it's too hard. I'm going to bring up two super chats because they're very nice. David G. Avi, doing a huge service reporting on the news and trying to uncover the truth. Avi,
from a fellow prisoner of Chairman Dan. David G. Love you, brother.
We're gonna get into that in a bit. We got Madam Von Kook says, is there a lot of anti-Semitism in Australia? The Jewish population is very small worldwide. I know there is a Hasidic community as well as Orthodox Jews. Does Avi consider himself non-secular? That was one of the questions I actually had. Coming from an Orthodox family, are you?
I'm confused. I love being a Jew. I love it. I'm proud of my Jewness, and I love that it pisses off all the right people. So maybe I don't love it for the right reasons. I grew up in an Orthodox community. I have a lot of very ultra Orthodox. We call them. My missus isn't Jewish, so we call them shtisels. That's if anyone's watched Shtisel. So we refer to what we would call in Israel penguins, the black and white Jews. We call them shtisels now. I love. Is there anti-Semitism? You know what? There's anti-Semitism everywhere. And it's weird because I hate the term already. It's been overused and abused by some people and some organizations, and a lot of Jewish organizations who invoke the Holocaust at every little thing. Do people hate Jews? Yeah, but people hate everybody. You know, like I think
there was. I forget which. This might be the perfect segue into the stand-up comedy issue, but there was a stand-up comedian who said, "There's no such thing as racist anti-Semites. There's just a-holes who are going to find a reason to
exactly." Like people hate fat people. People like I've never honestly, my entire life, I'm one of the proudest Jews in the world. I always go around saying, you know, when people call me whatever Jew, if I was fat, they would have said the same thing about me being fat. I think real true hatred for Jews, yes, there certainly is there are groups out there that do hate Jews for all the same reasons that have been going on for thousands of years. But I think the majority of people, even when they make a remark or they make an anti-Semitic statement or curse you in an anti-Semitic, they're not really anti-Semitic. They're not. They're just a-holes. Like, I'm anti-Semitic. Then I make fun of Jews all the time. You know what I mean? And I know somebody's going to cut this up. And they're going to take that one line. I once stood in front of a crowd in London where I had a kippah on my head. And I turned around and I was trying to tell the crowd that don't worry what they call you. I am the world's proudest Jewish Nazi. You know, I was being like, it was a joke. It was being ironic. It was being like, I was laughing at the fact that the Antifa on the other side were literally calling me a Nazi and all the group they're Nazis when I am a proud Jew. But they cut that up, and there was this organization that ran it as a headline: self-prescribed Nazi Jew. I hate the Nazis, guys.
I mean, it is mind-blowing. It's enraging. It's sort of terrifying as well. Like, every time I do a live stream and I have got 1,000 thoughts running through my head, the only thing I'm wondering is, how is someone going to cut this? Am I going to nod at the wrong comment? And someone's going to say, "Oh, Viva Frei tolerates X, Y, and Z because some person said this." It's the world we live in. It's not a world of truth. It's a world of distortion. And the more of the target one makes oneself, Avi, and I'm looking at you, the more you're going to get people who are going to want to do that.
And when one thing doesn't stick, they go on to the next. And thanks, Thomas.
No, so now speaking of which, Viva Avi, Thomas van der Wolf. Thank you. Here's the question, Jim. Let's get into the Jim Jeffries business, because I want to get into it and over.
Oh, mate.
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, Jim Jeffries, Avi agreed to do an interview with Jim Jeffries. I think, based from what I remember, your only condition was don't be dishonest in the editing.
No, it was
don't put me with someone who's
put me with neo-Nazis. And I actually named them because it was like well-known neo-Nazis at the time, and I knew that they were looking for someone for this specific show, and they called me. I was in Israel at the time, and I go, I'll do it on the two conditions: you don't put me with actual neo-Nazis, not somebody they just call like actual neo-Nazis. These are the neo-Nazis. Don't put me with any of them. And the other one was don't cut up my answers. Put my answers to the same questions. Don't cut it up.
The fact that anyone needs to specify this as a precondition.
I knew it. Listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'd watched his Jordan Peterson one. I knew who he was and what he does. That's why I went in there and recorded myself. That's why I put those cameras down, because I knew exactly who I was dealing with. They flew me to Singapore. You know, I'm not an idiot. So yeah, and they brought me over to. They had to wait till I got back to Australia, and I got back to Australia, and they set a date, and they flew me. They picked me up at my house, and I think it was for 3 days in Singapore. The funny thing is, I walk into that room where they're interviewing me in Singapore, and I had two phones in my hands, because if you watch the secret footage, you can see there's one that's clearer than the other. Anyone who does anything like this, the trick is to always take two copies. Although these days I'm a lot more high tech. I would have had the camera on me or whatever, but
you may have just blown the secret for anyone who didn't know that you secretly recorded the interview. But
I tell you, was I not supposed to say that yet?
Oh no, we're going to get there. So, bottom line, you agree to the interview, and Jim Jeffries does both of the things that you asked him not to do, but did not know that you were recording the entire thing from two separate.
I so dumbly didn't know that I was recording it, because I walked in the room and I placed these two phones I sat them up with pillows. Like, it took me a minute to organize them right. Like, I guess the only thing I was missing is 3, 2, 1. You know,
a GoPro on your forehead is what you were missing.
They were so self-obsessed that they just didn't notice me doing it. because I was also in my mind, I was thinking it would make good content if they brought me all the way here and then kick me out for filming it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I like it was a win-win for me. I was already there, and they were smug, and you know what? They held on to it for. It was worse than I actually imagined. I'd expected them to do those two things, but what they did that was really wrong is that they waited till the Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, and then they used my segment as in, and they essentially played it out like I was one of his inspirations. Mate, the guy doesn't. I'll tell you a little secret: the guy didn't like Jews. I wasn't one of his inspirations. But they just kind of let it in like that and opened and then did those two things exactly that I said. He put the Nazis first only short thing.
But I want people to appreciate, I mean, I think people do appreciate splicing the answer to a different question to another question during the interview. I mean, people have to appreciate, you know what, when I do the live streams, I say that one condition is we'll do it live and we're not going to edit it. And even if I post a smaller clip, it's going to be an unedited smaller clip.
Yeah, I edit stuff all the time. I got to rally for hours. I edit it, right? I would never take your answer from one question to a different. That's just morally wrong, and it's dishonest. Like to a point where if you have to do that, you've lost the argument already. And you're
there's no question. There's no question they've lost. By and large, the people who do this have lost the argument already, and they're going to lose the argument. And people are going to know like 10%. The only problem is Jim Jeffries got a pretty big audience who is not even going to think twice about it, who are going to buy it, and who are going to run with it. And that's the amazing.
He got so smashed for that. And
so what was the fallout? After he publishes his thing, you publish your unedited video. Then what happens?
It was Purim. It was actually Purim. I was at a. Do you know what Chabad is?
No, we've got Chabads all over.
So I was at like a Chabad event, and I didn't even know they published it. And one of the guys there goes, "Avi, you're just on Jim Jeffries." And then I went and watched it. I was like, he goes, Jim Jeffries. You look so bad. I looked at the rabbi. I go, "Here, mate, wait till the morning." And I sat up all night and I put together what then went viral, and it was just funny to watch his feeds just get smashed. And even till today, I still get tags every time Jim Jeffries does something, then suddenly I get all these tags of, just cursing him out. And it's like my name, his name. I must be in his nightmares.
Did I mean, I know his show got canceled. His show did get canceled, but not by anything as a direct result of your response.
Not that I know about it. I couldn't tell you based on that. It happened a few days after we filed something in court, but mate, they're such a huge company. Viacom is a tough company to beat.
So someone had asked if you filed defamation.
We did file it. We did file at some point, but honestly, couldn't afford to keep it up. What I'll tell you is, I'm Yemen. We are known in Israel to live a long life. As bad as how healthy our diet is, it's a high fat diet. We live forever, and I hold a grudge. I went to Jim Jeffries in Israel. What was it? Maybe time's getting weird now because of this lockdown, but it might be a year already now. A year ago, maybe a few months before lockdown. So, and went to Jim Jeffries' show. You should have seen what happened there and how quickly he ran in the back as security.
I mean, I can just imagine Jim Jeffries seeing you sitting in the audience would be like that episode of the Seinfeld where he saw the airline pilot. I mean, I
just watched that the other night. Yeah, no, it's even worse because I got there nice and early and security just went crazy, and they tried to intimidate me out of the area, and listen, like I said, I've got a long life. Jim Jeffries we'll cross paths again. All I want is an apology, and
hasn't come yet.
And just a recognition that I won.
You can't get an apology for that type of wrong because it is a long, calculated wrong that you can't apologize for.
You know what? I don't even need the apology anymore. I just want Avi, you beat me at my game. That's all I want. Recognition.
Here we got Dude Summon says in I guess that's Queensland, used to play Pokemon Go, heard some young people using Jew as a slur. Couldn't believe it as first time I had heard overt racism since the 90s.
I know, but I use it as a slur. Like when I call people a Jew when they're being a tight ass. Like, is it really a slur? Like, it's in Yemen, in Israel, they don't call you a Jew if you're a tight ass. They call you. Do you know what they call you?
I don't even want to guess.
In Israel, they call you a Yemen, a Tamani, which is so I'm screwed no matter where I go. I can't escape it. But it's like it's just that term. I don't know. I know a lot of Jews are sensitive about that, but it's kind of right.
It's at the risk of anybody saying I approve or tolerate, people use slurs. They use Jew as a slur. They use other words. Jews use words as slurs for other people. This is the thing. Every demographic uses a slur. I'd say
exactly.
those within the demographic who use slurs. There's slurs for every demographic out there.
I think context matters. I think if you mean it in a hurtful way, as in if somebody calls you whatever. If the context is mean and is targeting that specific thing. So if somebody just calls you because they're trying to say you're a Jew because you're a bit tight on the thing, that's become like nowadays slang.
Well, there's two things. Some will call that passive, the sort of I don't want to say passive.
Everyday, what do they call it? Everyday racism.
Everyday racism. Some people, some look. I've been in areas where people use terms and they don't even know that they have racist or anti-Semitic or discriminatory origin.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I think most people don't even think. I think most people who use that derogatory use of the word Jew when it comes to especially money, they don't think of it really like that. They don't actually connect it to a Jew. It's just become slang. But when somebody turns around and is really, hateful towards Jews, that's bad.
Well, the flip side is, I know people use all sorts of slurs reflexively as humor, as jest when you're, playing
right.
or whatever.
Exactly.
But I think the problem there is that is a symptom of something where it's just the objectification of an individual based on an identity. It can be mean spirited. It can be an attempted humor. It doesn't irritate me. I avoid it. But that's the context, which some people are going to say that's evidence of implicit racism. And then you have the more subtle racism, which is we never use that term, but we just don't let certain people into the golf club type thing. So it takes on all different forms. I think it's I avoid doing it because
I have a problem with that. I think that's bad, but I think just grow thicker skin, people.
Well, that's a different reality of it all. Is even if you are going to experience it, because everybody is going to experience some form of discrimination at some point in their life.
That's right.
Thicker skin, move on, and don't let it turn you into a permanent.
It drives me nuts, and I think our community is one of the worst, and it drives me up the wall how sensitive everyone is about everything. It's like. And you know what's funny is you can go into Friday night dinner in a lot of Jewish houses and they'll say stuff that is very racist to other groups and other minorities, and they won't even think twice about it, but say something, make a joke about the Holocaust, then you're the worst person in the world. Like,
yeah, that goes for every community.
Everyone's like that. Everyone's like that. I find that a lot of these organizations that push that narrative, like the Anti-Defamation League or ADL. Yeah, the ADL is one of the big ones, and they have another one here that's this part of the ADL. They're the worst, and they're the ones that create all these rules around words. It's like, mate, if you don't like what somebody's saying, don't listen to them.
Well, no, but this is the real problem. It's done. I think that it is weaponized by organizations deliberately so that you can create a world in which wearing a MAGA hat becomes as overt an act of whatever as using the most explicit racist term on earth. It's weaponized on purpose.
I've always said this. I've said this for a long time now that, when I was a kid, when I would hear, that guy's a Nazi, I would crap myself. I was a little Jew kid that, the Nazis to me, killed all our people or a big percentage of our people, and they're going to kill me, and the hairs on the back of my spine would kind of raise up. And the sad thing is today, if somebody says, "Oh, that's a Nazi over there," I think, "Oh man, that's probably a dude I'd want to have a beer with." Not because he's actually a Nazi, but because that term is so overused that now anybody who is a little right of center is suddenly a Nazi.
It's a funny thing. Be prepared for someone to cut that out of context. But the observation is, I'm looking you up. You were called a far right extremist, and in one context, a fascist. And I was like, whether or not you might have eccentric point of views. If anybody appreciates that you're an Orthodox Jew, calling you a far right extremist, same thing with Ben Shapiro. I mean, you can disagree; they can be conservative, but
Ben Shapiro has a really annoying voice. That's about it.
Well, I'm told that I talk faster than Ben Shapiro, or that we should have a talking competition. But it's his.
I like Ben.
No,
I like Ben.
But when you start calling Ben Shapiro's and ultra Orthodox or Orthodox Jews far right extremists or Nazis, I mean, you get into a world where people just don't.
Far right. They argue that you can be far right and whatever minority, which is true. You could believe in far right ideology, but yeah, calling proud Jews who would be the first victims of the Nazis. Hitler would not let me or Ben Shapiro into his club.
But it is the problem of weaponizing language results in the dilution of language. And when everybody becomes a whatever, the words cease to have meaning. And you're right. The only people they're calling that now are people who
they're the real fascists. They're the real fascists. And these people, they stand there, they curse me out. And the funny thing is, so many times when they do that, then they'll turn me out. When I turn around, they'll start cursing me out for being a Zionist, which they really mean as a proud Jew. They're underhanded. So I'm just sitting there looking at them, going, "You're standing there cursing me out, yelling, 'Get fascists off our streets,' and all this stuff that kind of became funny after a certain amount of time." And I'm thinking, you guys are literally the biggest fascists in the world. You are exactly what you're calling everybody else. And it's weird how that has escalated after over the past few years. I've seen that no matter what these people say about me, it is actually them, and you just feel like holding a mirror up to them.
It's called projection. I talk about it,
but I don't like saying projection because that's their word as well.
Oh, it's
stolen all English.
Even when they use projection, it's projection. No, but I mean, it's true of everybody. I mean, to some extent, it's true of everybody who lacks a certain amount of self-reflection. Is you don't see that what you are actually criticizing is true of yourself. I'm gonna get these super chats.
Adam's asking. So no, I'm not pursuing a defamation case for Jim Jeffries anymore. I started it, but it just wasn't viable because Viacom is a company that owns everything I'll ever own. But I have some other exciting stuff coming up in the next few days, which bigger fish to fry than Jimmy Boy. So I'd say you can watch this space. Standwithavi.com. Watch it over the next few days. I promise you.
We're going to get into this because whenever you hear whenever you hear a unique, dedicated website, it's a rebel media
I love it.
Strategy. It's a good way of keeping things clear. But so we'll get into the rebel in a second here. I'll bring this one up. We got for getting up early, John Christopher. Thank you. Yes, it's very, very early. I don't hear footsteps upstairs, which is good. Matthew,
healthy, Avi. Yeah, but not look up Malawach. Jahnon, trust me. I don't know how these Yemenites live forever. My grandma, she claims to be 81. She's claimed that for the last 20-something years. I've tried to explain her that every year you're actually meant to go up a year. They eat the most like fried food. But the one thing is she was always doing chin-ups. She does 5 chin-ups every morning off her washing line. So she once told my little brother once had he had a sore back, and he said, Safta, he was telling us about his sore back. She lives in Israel, and he goes, Safta, oh my back. And she goes, I got the perfect exercise that can fix your back. Diddy, my brother's name is Diddy, Rabbi Diddy in New York. And he goes, my yeah, I got the perfect exercise that can fix your back, and she's talking about her malach is the shit.
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how someone's writing using. Well, I guess they have a Hebrew type.
Malach, I know what they're writing. They're good. I love malach, but it ain't good for you. And she goes, you could do this exercise with me and it'll fix your back, and I'll even do it half an hour later just for you. He goes, what time, Safta? She goes, I'll do 5:30. He goes, Safta, my back's fixed. I'm all better. No problem. Don't worry about it. But she's, yeah.
Amazing. That's okay. Now let's stand with Avi.com bringing us now. You have recently joined up with Rebel Media.
What is it? What day is it today? Tuesday. Almost 2 weeks.
2 weeks with I mean, can you tell us how that comes to be? I know that
I was with TR News for the last couple of years, which is, I won't say his name so you don't get banned off this channel. So your feed doesn't fall away.
I've covered the I can't even, the contempt case. I did a few videos on that, but yeah, we know who you're talking about.
So I was with his channel, and the truth is, like, I loved working with him. I love him. He's like my brother. He's one of the most genuine people. You might not agree with everything he says or does or whatever, but I tell you right now, he's one of the most genuine people on this planet, and definitely in this space. I've been in this space for enough time to realize that there's a lot of people that are just doing it for all different reasons. He's somebody that doesn't need to go to jail for the cause, but went to jail a few times for the cause. So, but I think with everything happening, he's got to focus a lot on more court cases. So I joined Rebel 2 weeks ago, Thursday.
Okay, amazing. And now, sorry, as a
Saturday, I was arrested.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what we're getting into. So you join me? Are you joining as a independent journalist? As a
So I'm working for them now, so full time.
Okay, amazing. So wait a minute, maybe make sure I didn't forget anything. The Jim Jeffries we did. Okay, good. So let's get into the. Oh yeah, so that was the last time you got detained. We're going to get into this one actually before
the FBI.
When you got detained at LAX by the FBI, because I think was that the first time you were detained by the police?
I don't know, potentially.
Okay, so either way, but so what happens there? Because you go to LA to do a tour.
Oh yeah, I rocked up to LA. Listen, I may have posted online that I was going to see him, which potentially wasn't a great idea. And I think Politicalite, which is like a British publication news site, I think because that's what they showed me. They published the story that I'm going there to see to confront Jim Jeffries about what happened, because they weren't answering us, and they ran it with a photo of me from the army with my M4.
Okay.
So Jim Jeffries called the FBI, or Viacom called the FBI. The FBI met me as soon as I landed. And it was quite funny because as soon as I got, like, they took me into this room, and they were quite nice. They were fine. And they started reading to me the laws of consent of secretly filming. That's what they started with in that jurisdiction in LA. And I'm just looking at them going, guys, I've literally been searched how many times now in the last half an hour? Where do you think this camera might be?
Well, if anybody in the comment section knows, because I can't Google it, is California a one-party consent state or a two-party consent state? I would imagine
a two-party consent state. That's what that's what they were reading to me. So they were explaining to me that in LA we both have to agree. And I'm just looking at them going, like, it was just a weird, like, think about it. Anyone that's flown to Australia, you've flown for all up, you're talking about after 20 hours of traveling or flying, or 25 hours it could have even been, you get it, weirdly put into this room, and two FBI agents show their badges and to introduce themselves as FBI agents, and then suddenly start reciting the law, the state law on two-party consent. And so that's at the end of it, they cleared me of everything. They were fine, they were chill. We were talking about the Israeli army, we were talking about, it was They were good guys. Well, I had no.
They cleared you, but sent you back.
They didn't deport me. No. What happened then was because because of the process of that interview. So then it straight away causes for I was on a visa waiver, which I'd been on 6 months earlier, the same visa waiver. So you get it for, I think, 3 or 10 years. I can't remember. You get a period of time as an Aussie, you can go there with this visa waiver. But the problem was when I was much younger, when I was about 18, I got rejected a visa. So I worked in the States and then I tried to come back and I got rejected a visa. And I never, when I went for the visa waiver, it's whatever. This is like, it was just, the fact that they interviewed me caused them, they had to check my visa again. And then they found that. So they wouldn't have found it otherwise. I didn't even realize. I totally forgot about it. It was like innocent. But all they told me is even that what do they call the people at the immigration? What are they called in America?
Customs officers? Or you got border agents?
The border agent, the head border agent at LAX, she was like, Avi, I'm your biggest fan. I really want you to get, this is her word. She goes, I really want you to get that Jim Jeffries bastard. But please, you have to, like, there's nothing I can do because the protocol makes them do it. So it makes them review it. That's just, and then they found that I had been rejected once and I hadn't, all it means is you actually have to get a visa. You can't come back on a visa waiver. So all I had to do was go back to Australia and reapply for an actual visa, which
all you have to do is fly back to Australia and reapply and come back. That sounds like a bit of a pain in the neck.
But yeah, when I got back to Australia, I just realized he was going to be in Israel anyways. So then I booked my flight to Israel instead, in a place that he can't get me deported because I hold dual citizenship. But yes, so we did look. It wasn't only a defamation case we were looking at. We were looking at false police report, or there's certain laws in the States when you make up some sort of claim to the police.
Well, there's filing a false police report depending on the state.
No, there's another one that's more serious when you're literally making something up for the purposes of what he did.
What you're explaining, though, it does illustrate a certain problem with reading texts, and the written word can be interpreted much differently than the tone in which it was written. So you say, "I'm coming to see you, Jeffrey," and on his end, he's like, "He's coming." What is? I mean, someone can interpret that as being a threat if they were so inclined.
Well, yeah, especially with that image, it probably was. I probably shouldn't have posted it.
When in doubt.
I think I was crowdfunding it, so I crowdfunded the whole trip. So there was kind of no other option for me. I had to say I was going to do that, otherwise no one would help me go.
Or if you run it by an attorney, they'll say, "I am going to catch a Jim Jeffries show," or something that not coming to see you, or we're gonna sort this out type thing.
Yeah.
John Space is secretly recording a scheduled interview for a TV show. What? No, I think in California when you got there, they were telling you the laws to make sure that you were not secretly recording.
I wasn't recording the FBI. Yeah, mind you, I wish I was.
Oh my God. Clement Poe says Melbourne represent. Okay, so that's
Melbourne.
It's hilarious in retrospect, I imagine, and makes for a good story, but a big pain in the neck. And that was the first time I said, when that happened, I wanted to know what happened with that resulted in you getting turned back, and so it ends up being an unrelated visa issue that was discovered as a result of being detained.
It was just that caused the visa check. So it was he succeeded accidentally, because if I'd actually had a visa, but what was interesting, the woman, the head of whatever she was, the immigration, she said to me, the problem is that if we checked 90% of these visa waivers, they would all get sent home on a technicality like you. It was just a technicality, but they have to process it. So once you go through that, they have to double check it because that's the protocol. And once they find that, they have to just send you home. I wasn't banned. I wasn't anything. It just means go home, reapply for the visa, say that you got turned around because of that, and you'll get it again. You'll be granted most likely again because you are okay.
Okay, interesting. At least that answers a couple of the questions. Now let's get into the most current, being detained by the police. So, for anybody, okay, we need to back up and just understand a bit of Australia. I had to look into it because I largely unaware. Australia as a country is separated into, do they call them provinces or states in
States,
Australia?
states.
Now, are these states having no idea about the culture, the politics of Australia? Are these states like the states in the United States? Are they like provinces in Canada, or are they like districts in England or something?
No, they're states. Australia's huge, so probably more like America. So they have their own. They each have their own parliament, but their state parliament. Then you have federal. I think it's a bit in
It
that
sounds
way similar to
similar to Canada.
America.
Okay. So yeah, the individual governance. There's, I guess, there's federal funding, and then there's state funding.
Exactly.
So similar. Okay. So I looked it up. There's Queensland, the West. What's the
Western
other one?
Australia.
Then there's I took screenshots. What are the states in Australia?
Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, Northern Territory, Tasmania. Are there any Aussies in here that I'm gonna really embarrass
Let me just pull up my screenshots
Have I
research I
forgotten
was doing this morning.
Canberra. I forgot the capital. The ACT. I forgot the
Queensland,
capital.
New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Northern Australia.
South Australia.
and Western Australia.
Shoot. All right.
Okay, so
I'm an embarrassment.
Brendan McLaughlin says, "Shout out to Chairman Dan." And that picture is we had a case in Canada of someone in a storm ship trooper getting arrested. Okay, so the different states, and the different states are they implementing different protocol on the lockdown, like radically different?
100%. So, as many have pointed out in your chat here, is that Comrade Chairman Dan is considered. He is a dictator. We call him Dictator Dan down here at the moment. He's gone the hardest for the longest, and the longest in the world. And he's also gone. He went longer than all the states in the first lockdown, and then it ended up being really his mess up, his screw ups that caused the second wave. He failed the hotel quarantine. So his one job, he locked us all up. He made us have the toughest restrictions for the longest amount of time. And then when we finally got out, it turned out that his one job that he had, which was the hotel quarantine of the international arrivals, he, instead of having, like all the other states, instead of having the military and the police in charge, he put private security companies that were rorting the system in charge, which they were just spreading the virus from overseas. So they were just, in one case, there was one guard sleeping with a guest. Basically, they were able to pay to leave the hotel quarantine with sex.
Okay, that's
where we. So then we got a second wave, and we're in the second wave now. So we've almost been in lockdown on and off for 6 months here. And till lately, it's been a stage 4 lockdown, which has been crazy. You're talking about a curfew.
So hold on a second. So how do we call Dan? Dan, other than Conrad?
Dan Andrews.
No, he's the what is he? A minister?
Premier
of Victoria.
Yep. Premier.
And Victoria is the one with the longest and strictest lockdown measures.
It's quite a leftist state. So,
okay.
The weird thing of all of this is he'll probably get back in even after everything.
And so I don't know. I hadn't heard of this failure of the hotel system and the corruption within of people. Documented cases of people actually having intercourse in order to.
There's a parliamentary inquiry at the moment. Yes, yes. But it also, so they say that they did what do they call it, genomics or whatever they call it, of tracking each virus strain, and so 99% of the cases now all stem from that, all stem from the hotel quarantine. So we had essentially almost eradicated COVID from Australia. Every state was having 0 cases basically, similar to New Zealand. And then suddenly this second wave came in, which was his hotel quarantine. But he didn't take any responsibility. He, in fact, at every stage blamed every other group. Even till today, he does those apologies. You know, when somebody says, "I'm sorry that you feel whatever," basically not sorry for their actions. That's what he's done the whole time. And right now, where you just see civil liberties being just taken.
When you say, I mean, now when you're saying there's a second wave of an outbreak and 99% of the cases are coming from this, you know, setting aside whether as a principle, how many cases are you dealing with now in Victoria?
And now it's like, that's a funny thing. Like, to you guys, you'll probably listen to it and you'll be like, "What?" I don't know what today was. Yesterday there was 35 cases.
35 new confirmed cases.
Yeah.
Okay, and then people can assess what measures. It's an interesting thing, and I've tweeted about it in the past. But like when Canada and first went on lockdown, it was the same thing in the States. It was flatten the curve to not overwhelm the hospital system.
Exactly.
And now the measurement is confirmed new cases, and we're dealing with. But the argument always goes, well, if more new confirmed cases will eventually lead to, and that's why now that's why the goalposts have sort of shifted. So you're dealing with 35 new confirmed cases, in give or take, in a population.
I don't know what today's numbers was, but
no, but I mean, like we're dealing under 100, and give.
Oh, now we're between 40 and we're somewhere around the 40 each day. They're basically not. He's saying he's not going to totally open up until we have 2 weeks straight of under 5 cases, which you're not even seeing in the other states.
What's the population of Victoria, give or take?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you. What is Victoria? I would guess 5 or 6 million. Would I be right? 7 million?
Victoria includes Melbourne. I mean, it's okay. So these are the lockdown measures that are going on in Victoria. The video that we saw, the Facebook arrest of the pregnant woman. For anybody who hasn't seen that, that was I don't know her name offhand, but it was an Australian woman. Was she from?
She's from Ballarat. So Ballarat is about an hour from central Melbourne. It's like a big country town. It's the third largest city in Victoria, but it's a big country town. They have a bit over 100,000 people who live there. And when she got, there we go, 6 million. When she got arrested, there were 6 active cases out of 100,000 people.
6 active cases.
6 active cases in Ballarat.
And she got arrested for sharing postings, a protest against
incitement. They call it incitement now. They use, again, you know how you say they weaponize language? They do that now in the judicial system by taking a word like incitement, which you would, till coronavirus, incitement meant inciting people to violence. That was what usually when you heard a charge of incitement, that's what the incitement was. Now incitement is inciting people to protest. That has become the latest charge, the latest weaponizing of, like you say, language. And you saw the footage. I think the whole world's seen the footage. How you can justify coming into a pregnant woman's house, arresting her in front of her kids, and making her spend a night in lockup because she posted an event. She created an event, a Facebook event for a freedom march in which she told everyone to wear masks and stay socially distanced in a place that had 6 active cases. If you can justify that, you don't actually deserve to live in a democratic, free society. You should just ship yourself off to China.
We got Will Durant says, "This is pissing me off," and I don't know what this is, and he might mean the subject matter, or he might mean the subject matter. I think it's probably irritating a lot of people.
It's mad.
Okay, I mean and if anybody hasn't seen it, I mean you have to see it. I had to double check to make sure that the facts around that story were what they were initially being passed off as, because you read something, you say it's not possible. Incitement has specific terms. It's relatively targeted. It immediate harm, immediate violence. And when they're saying incitement, to hold a protest. I mean, there could be other ways of dealing with it, but like we were talking about with Barnes and a bunch of other streams, I'll bring this chat up afterwards. Weaponizing the process to instill fear in the people, like this would be, even if it were, let's assume it is in fact something of a crime or a citable offense. You issue a citation to appear, you piece of paper, show up at court on this date, and you'll defend yourself. Issue a ticket. But this like, 6 a.m. pre-dawn raid with armed FBI agents, boarding a yacht, these public arrests. It's like, you can't blame someone for thinking it's to send us a signal, and we're going to get,
It is. That's exactly what it is. It's designed to set a signal that we're charging and arresting people for incitement because they're putting us all in such grave danger.
We got Cormoran says, and Victorian police aren't just going after protesters. If you think you're safe not protesting, they beat a bipolar man into a coma on Sunday.
That is a pretty shot. Did you see the footage of that one?
Footage. I mean, this is the thing now. Social media, internet. I mean, you see you see everything, and you, in your own mind, can potentially start making rules of the exceptions, because when you start, people find these videos and they go viral. With the degree to which it actually reflects what's going on in general and not exceptional cases of police being using excessive force, I struggle with that. Not to be traumatized by these images and not to think that they're more prevalent than they are. But you're in there. I mean,
listen, I tell you this. I am back the blue. I absolutely support law enforcement, and I think I got a tea. I got offered a tea. See, to go with my wine. Thanks. So where was I? I can't even remember now.
Back the blue.
So I back the blue. I think law enforcement, anyone that says defund the police are idiots. Whatever. They're going to be the first people to call the police. I know that. But what is happening in Victoria at the moment is crazy. I've never seen it before. That rally that we're getting into was an example of where I seen it for the first time in my life. I've never seen Victoria Police act that way. And, the only time I've ever seen any real police acting in that sort of way, so brazenly, did not care about anyone's rights. It didn't seem like in their vocabulary that day. So they were, the only place I've seen that before was Hong Kong. I hadn't really seen, and it was just weird and bizarre to see it on the streets in Melbourne.
You're saying weird and bizarre. I mean, if I'm you, I'm thinking this is traumatizing. Like, how do you go back to ever looking at the system you thought was there to protect you, and then you feel like it's there to oppress you?
I think if you think about it logically, it makes kind of sense. Well, I don't think I support the police absolutely, but I think it's human nature. You give somebody, these sorts of powers, which under the state of emergency in Victoria, which they just extended, which was a big thing in itself. But under the state of emergency, the declared state of emergency, they have these powers that they can get away with so much. It's unprecedented. It's in fact, never in our history has it been extended. That there was a 6-month cap, and that is precisely for the reason that it gives them so much power. They're meant to be in 4-week blocks up to 6 months maximum. That was the legislation. I remember in the first 4 weeks, I had a question about it, and I said, "Are you sure?" Because I looked at it under the declaration when it was declared a state of emergency. I saw now police have the right to enter your home without a warrant, and I looked at that and I'm thinking, that's a bit weird. And I was talking about it with some friends in the media, and I said to them, how come nobody's really talking about it? And they go, well, unlike in New Zealand, where they passed legislation which allows them to enter your house without a warrant under the thing of coronavirus, in Victoria, there's tight restrictions. There's tight legislation around how long this state of emergency can be declared, the 4 weeks and then the 6 months. So no one is too worried because you can't really become a dictator from that. What do you know? Fast forward 6 months, they're extending it. And the police are just naturally a lot of cops, and like there are a lot of good coppers, and even on that day, that's why when you're going to refer to that video, I kind of laughed, is because I see cops all the time, and they're like, "Hey, Avi, what's going on, bro?" You know, and they're talking about my last video. I have a lot of fans in the police, and I think a lot of them do good work. But as soon as you give any human or any human group such power, it's going to be abused. It just is. That is human nature.
And it's like one step past that. It's not just the power, but it's the power with an objective that then it becomes sort of like an internal competition with the group to obtain that objective or to attain that objective. And they say, this is what we want, and this is where we're going to get it. And we have the power, and the measure of how well we do our job is going to be how well we implement our power to achieve that objective that has been given to us. I mean, and that's really the root of all. On the one hand, it's the root of all success, and it's the root of all oppression. It's sort of the same strategy, just almost applied without discretion in one case versus the other. It's like when I saw that your arrest, I said there was either no discretion or there was deliberate discretion, and it was to go after you specifically in that moment. Victoria is to Australia as California is to America. So that's what it's. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like. I have family in California, and some of them approve of the harsh measures, and others.
Well, you get that too here. You get people here that approve of the harsh measures. I think that some people are just really scared about the virus. Then there's a lot of people that are not that scared about the actual virus. They're just really scared about a prolonged lockdown. They believe the government's messaging that if we can just flatten the curve keeps getting lower and lower. Now it's under 5 cases, which most experts say is almost unreachable, really, a 2-week, sustaining that. So we may get a 2-week average, but then keeping that going will not happen. So people are just scared.
Well, that's the other thing I say it goes more one way than the other. People are terrified. They've spent the last 6 months hearing. I mean, I listen to talk radio, not on purpose, just because my iPhone charger doesn't play my music off my phone. I hear talk radio. It's nothing but 24/7. Doctors saying this, and by and large, you hear different messages, but you just hear messages 24/7, and it becomes all encompassing. So you have people who are terrified, who are thoroughly convinced that the stricter you follow the rules, the safer you'll be. Not commenting on whether or not for right or for wrong. That's the way some feel.
Yeah.
Others say there's little we can do to some extent, or to some extent we can't control it 100%, and it can't trump basic civil liberties. And you get a polarization in society where someone says, of course she should not have been posting posts to have a protest. We're in the midst of a pandemic, not knowing the numbers, or even knowing the numbers, saying we got to keep them that way so it doesn't get worse. And others are saying, how can this possibly be justified even in the context of a pandemic? But so let's now, knowing the context of Victoria and the severeness of the measures being implemented. Sorry, what happened on that day? If anyone hasn't seen your video, it's on Rebel News. It's on your YouTube channel.
It'll be on that same URL. What was it? Standwithavi.com.
Standwithavi.com, which is
to learn these by heart.
I'm in touch with Ezra, and I at one point I said it's a good idea to do this, and I just asked why he does it, because he has different websites for every different cause, and it's a great way to keep them distinct, and so people know what they're supporting when they go.
It just makes it easier, because like now in the context of this interview, you want to know where to go. I have no idea where on Rebel it would be, but I just tell you, standwithavi.com. It'll take you there.
Okay. So standwithavi.com, and that is going to have the video. I guess that's going to have.
Right now, it has the petition, which has I think almost 60,000 people that sign it, and it has the video.
Amazing. So now, tell us what happens the day up. Where are you going? Where is it? Describe it.
So it was obviously the rally that right before that woman got arrested. There was an ex-soldier that his door got kicked in, and he got arrested for incitement to this rally. So there was a lot of hype in the media about this protest, and obviously it's my job, so I went to cover the protest for Rebel News. And to be fair, like, I got there, they said they weren't going to let any feet touch the ground. That was the strong messaging that the government was giving. the police would enforce the COVID restrictions. You got to bear in mind that not long ago, during COVID restrictions, Black Lives Matter rallied by the tens of thousands on these same streets and were allowed to do so. In fact, the government here stated that how can we enforce, what are we going to, his wording specifically, Dictator Dan said, what are we going to do? Arrest thousands of people. So he was saying we can't do anything. He's saying don't go, but there's nothing we can do. And they issued 3 fines to the organizers of $1,600 each. Those are the fines that they were giving participants, 150 people who attended to the last rally. So very different reaction to the protest, which was already a thing that was raising eyebrows. Why with one group? And I can easily answer it. To me, it's clear as day.
It's politicizing science and it's politicizing everything.
Well, it's clear as day. The supporters of Black Lives Matter are typically Labor, Green supporters, members, voters, politically active, left-leaning people. It's a hard one for a left-leaning government to shut down because you're making an enemy of your own base. The other group are there to protest his actions in the context of coronavirus. They're literally protesting the premier. So it's not going to hurt him if he goes after them hard. So he went hard. But when I got there, it was fine. There's a couple of arrests when I first get there. Then they marched for a few hours. I spoke to them. I spoke to a bunch of protesters. I was probably walking for 3 hours. That was what was annoying for me. I said to the guys, lads, you told me you're pretending to exercise, but this is starting to really feel like exercise. After a 3-hour walk, I was getting tired. But then suddenly police kind of boxed them into a corner of Albert Park Lake, which you see it all in there, and create a police zone. And out of nowhere, I'm covering what's happening behind me. There's a few arrests. I'm in the area where you see all the journalists and the footage from about 2 minutes before my arrest, which I've watched in the last few days, shows clearly that I'm with the journalists. In fact, when police created a line, I said, let's be with all the journalists. I verbalize it and I say it, and it's all there. And out of nowhere, when I'm doing a piece to camera, the police commander comes storming towards me with his finger out, going, you're not here for a purposeful reason. I want him under arrest. I thought the guy was joking. I cracked up laughing.
I thought the guy was joking also. Like, I thought he was impersonating someone who was making a joke to you the way he approached you, because it was so exaggerated and so, I don't know, not knowing it was just exaggerated. It was like someone playing a character in a play.
And that's how it felt when I was standing there. I thought he was it was playful, but then it got real very quickly. When like a whole group of confused looking cops came up and just took me down to the ground, and I'm like, what?
Now, so the two questions I had seeing this, because I'll get to the big point. You had a media pass, right? It's you get recognized as
media, and had you got to have a work permit at the moment to be outside of your 5Ks, to be outside of your home at the moment. So we're in lockdown stage 4. You're not allowed out of your home, besides for one person to be at the supermarket in the family within 5Ks of your home, 1 hour of exercise a day. So if you're outside of that, you got to have an actual work permit that's filled out with one of the recognized justifiable reasons, which are legitimate, which I had all the paperwork. Don't worry. I went there.
Yeah, but I just I think my internal jaw just dropped. I didn't know that these were the conditions being implemented on Victoria.
These are the conditions. And I was abiding by their crazy conditions. In fact, if you watch the beginning of that video, you see I go through a COVID roadblock, and they checked all our paperwork and they okayed us to go into that rally. So I was kosher.
There's ultra kosher now. So you're in there. You've applied for the permits. You get the permits. You get past the checkpoints, having showed all of your permits, all of your whatever paperwork.
And I was with the rally for an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. I don't even
But
remember.
before they take you down, oh sorry, actually before that, you're not wearing a mask when you're reporting, obviously, because I guess.
Yeah, no. The rule is as a journalist, you don't have to have it on you while you're reporting. So I kind of have it on my chin the whole time.
And I just know it wasn't on your mouth, so I was wondering. Okay, fine. There's authorization for that, but before they take you down, no opportunity to give you to put it over your mouth. But before they make close contact with you to cuff you, I guess nobody asked you to put your mask on.
No. They're so scared of the virus and it's so dangerous and all this, but it almost becomes a joke.
Well, so they take. I mean, I don't want everyone to appreciate this. If you haven't seen the video, they take Avi down.
Five of them, yeah. Five
close contact, close quarters. I don't know if I don't remember now.
Down, straight to the ground, like I'm a violent. Like I was complying. I didn't resist. I went with him. I was not. I was asking him why. I was trying to understand why.
And there was no physical resistance at all. Just I saw. But they cuffed you, right? Like they zip tied.
Cuffed me tight. Like I'm gonna go try escape from this. It was so over the top. It was excessive. It was excessive force for a compliant. It was an unlawful arrest with an excessive amount of force used for something. And I'm just glad that I still had. I was wearing my lapel mic. And I captured all the audio, and because I'm standing there going, I know their tricks, and they always do that. And I'm like, what am I under arrest for? Because he said when he marched to me, it was, you're not here for a purposeful reason. Well, actually, mate, I kept telling him my permit is in my back pocket. It tells you the purposeful reason why I'm legitimately, lawfully here. So you can't have arrested me for that because I made it quite clear that I was here for that. For a purposeful reason. So then like some time during my arrest, they started this hindering nonsense where they started to claim that I was there for hindering. I was being arrested for hindering police. So I don't know, obstructing police.
No, I mean, maybe if now that term has been broadened to include reporting, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, well, and if you watch it, you can see I'm standing alone. I'm standing alone.
Everybody has to watch the video because when they watch it now, everyone's going to, I think, before watching it, they'll say, you must have done something to deserve it. I mean, that's sort of like,
I've been arrested before at protests. I have been arrested. The last one, Australia Day, you can look on my YouTube for that one. They arrested me in that case for my own safety. So Antifa started to kind of close in on me. And I said, no, I'm cool. But they arrested because I was refusing to move on. And so they said they were arresting me for my own safety. And again, in that case, I wasn't charged. I wasn't fined. I wasn't anything. I was, just put in handcuffs and forced to stand, behind and pushed into a police car for my own safety. But this one was different. This one was, I was alone doing a piece to camera. No one around me. There was a few journalists in that area, cops. There was an arrest happening. I don't know, maybe 6 meters behind me. So I couldn't have obstructed anybody's path. He marched to me out of nowhere. He knew who I was. He knows that I'm a critical commentator of these state of emergency powers that they have. He obviously doesn't like that. He took the opportunity because he believes at this point he has that right. He has that power to take anybody down, and nobody has rights, not even the press. And that is scary. And that's what I say to people. He's like, you don't have to like my style of reporting. I'm a bit of a larrikin. I joke around. I love a laugh. I don't take myself too seriously, but I report on issues and I'm at actual protests, and it's my job. And I was lawfully there. So you don't have to like what I'm saying, but if you don't defend my right to say it, you don't realize what you're doing to yourself and to the future of this so-called free democratic way of life you've been so used to until now.
Absolutely. Okay, now I'm going to bring up a few super chats that I have not seen. Jenny Luce says, Computing Forever had a video indicating that the central bank was giving money to governments to shut down and cause chaos. Could explain police behavior if true. Everyone has a price. Question is how much? Let's see. There were two more. Let's just bring these down. Here we go, because I have more questions on what happens after the arrest. Brendan McLaughlin says, Scotty for Marketing needs to launch a royal commission into Victoria's abuse of their emergency powers. I did not know the degree to which the lockdown was being implemented in Victoria. That is, I think that's going to be shocking to everybody who is not in Victoria or Australia. There was one more super chat that I missed here. Where is it? Come on, here we go. Stephen Oliver says the Western Australia government has created laws that make them exempt from civil and criminal consequence after Clive Palmer won a case in arbitration against them. States doing crazy stuff. Viva Frei.
I agree. I think most of the states are doing some pretty crazy stuff. Victoria is certainly the worst.
You can't leave your house past 5 kilometers.
Yep.
That's been this case for how many months now?
We've been in that one for a few months.
And you can leave for 1 hour a day to exercise.
1 hour a day to exercise. They're upping it to 2 hours from, I think, this week or next week.
And you can leave your house to go get groceries and supplies, but that has to be within 5 kilometers.
And one person, you can't go. Only one person from the house can do that.
I mean, I mean that's mind blowing. I mean, that's mind blowing, and I thought I was relatively familiar with the situation. That's mind blowing. And right. People in the States.
That is, if you remember the beginning of the year, where much of the free world was looking in horror at some of the footage we were getting from Wuhan, China, about how the police were enforcing these COVID restrictions, what we now know to be COVID restrictions. Do you remember how we were mocking them? The internet was outraged. And fast forward 6 months, they're partying in Wuhan, but we're here doing exactly what we condemned.
Yeah, well, you're not. They're not blowtorching doors closed, but they are. They don't have to because there's no way. There's no way of opposing it anyhow. I got a kid in the basement. Okay, so now you get cuffed.
That didn't sound right, mate. I have a kid in the basement.
Well, the kids are up now, getting ready for school. I've never been cuffed, so I don't know what it feels like. But how long do they keep the cuffs on for? What happens? Do they take you to the police?
They took me to the side for about probably 15, 20 minutes. They're bullies. You know what they do? They try to intimidate you and scare you and trip you up and get you to say things that are going to kind of incriminate yourself for something that they can use. Remember, this time and last time that I was arrested in that scenario, I was never charged. I was never fined. They give me these move-on orders, which is essentially then it makes it that if I breach the move-on order, then I'm committing a criminal offense, even if the basis of the move-on order is illegal. Now, yes, I can. So if I do breach that move on order that they gave me. So if you're watching the end of the video, you hear him say, I'm cautioning you, you've got it for 24 hours, you can't be in this area. If you do come back here, you'll either be arrested again or detained, locked up, or fined, or whatever it is. And then I would have to go to court and essentially fight that, basically proving the move on direction in the first place was illegal. I didn't do it because at that point I figured I didn't even need it. I had enough to show the world what is happening in Melbourne, that even journalists are unsafe. And like I said to you before and to your viewers, is watch this space, because I'm with Rebel now. So before, when it happened to me last time, I was with TR. Anyone that knows Rebel, they don't take too kindly to this kind of treatment of their people, which is good, because
it's something that people don't appreciate. Also, like, in the hierarchy, for lack of a better word. Independent journalists, no one would care. They say, "Oh, you're just out there. You're an agitator. You're asking for trouble."
If you watch the media,
say, "Oh, that's a."
In that one, you see, I talked to the media there, who were also pushed around a little, not treated the way I was treated, but I asked them, did you see they did not care about what happened to me, and they know me very well. And then it turns out that the hot mic, my cameraman happened to catch them whinging about the same thing, but then in their reports at night, not reporting on any of that police behavior. And I'm just sitting there going, the world needs to see that not only are the police behaving like that because of these powers, but the media is enabling it. And it's because they have this cushy kind of relationship where he doesn't want to upset him. He doesn't want, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Well, all right.
In Canada, it's even more of an incestuous relationship where you have the federal government imposing the rules, financing or subsidizing the media that then reports on it. And so you have an incestuous vested interest in the one, patting the other on the back and feeding the other. But Deadbeat Cotton says, but those are the police you absolutely support, Avi. Which
no, I support law enforcement. I think that you do need certain laws, and you need to trust people to enforce them, but you also need to have tight restrictions and regulations to make sure that the enforcers don't become tyrannical and don't become criminals themselves. And that is part of law and order. Part of law and order is to ensure that your police are also not corrupt, because otherwise you turn into one of any corrupt police force is like that as well. You give people power without any oversight, any real oversight, then that breeds that kind of behavior. And so, yes, I absolutely support those cops who get into the job for the right reasons, to serve and protect the community, to take down those armed robbers, to take down the violent offenders, to take down, real criminals. But I think those cops today that are enjoying those state of emergency powers that are being given to them and basically abusing them, they don't deserve to be cops. And I think that they just shouldn't also be given that temptation, because I could see how even the cops that came in for the right reason, under the wrong kind of environment, will be tempted in abusing those powers. It's human nature.
And the thing is this: it's an interesting distinction. Is supporting law enforcement versus supporting law enforcement does not translate into supporting police abuse. The problem here is that this isn't even police abuse. This is government abuse, which is government abuse, because some people contest that term. But this is
there's a mix, because there is also police abuse. That's the thing. The fact that the government have given them these powers has empowered the police body, the police command, to kind of send these messages to their officers to say that they are essentially above the law. And that's why now more important than any time is to actually push back and say, hold on, mate, you're actually accountable. And no government can give you a free pass to start arresting journalists, to be stomping on people's heads, to be arrested. All this kind of stuff we need to push back around the world. And these governments, our government learned from your government learned from some local state governments in America. They're all feeding off each other. The Australians are learning off the British. They're seeing how it's working. They're getting empowered. We all of us in the free world need to stand up and fight for our freedoms before they're completely taken from us. And I know that there are some crazy people that go out there and agitate and walk around and get in the faces of people without a mask, just to, as we say in Hebrew, dafka, just to annoy. I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm saying just stand up for your right. Do not let your government and your police forces act that way. And, defend the right of the population to actually get back to work. Yes, take the virus seriously. Take it seriously. Don't ignore the fact that it's there, but don't take away everybody's right at the same time, because at the end of the day, they can't even prove that all what they're doing changes anything.
No, and some people were noting, I forget what state it was. They said same population as Victoria, none of these measures, and things have leveled off the same way they have elsewhere. So it's the science is not there. That's the other thing is scientists, politicians say we don't. There's a lot we don't know.
I don't know. So there's a balance there, and if you're going to base everything on, if you're going to take away all our liberties, all our rights for something that you don't know, that you admit you don't know, then what's going to stop you from doing it after this COVID pandemic passes? What's going to stop you from the next time there's some sort of anything for you to turn around and go, oh, we don't know? Well, there's a precedence. You've set a precedence that when you don't know, the default is take away people's rights. That we just can't.
It's an interesting thing because it's always a question of degree or scale. Like it's people saying, oh well, it's either all or nothing. Where in this case, it's just a question of tempering the restrictions with what is sufficiently known, and that's the discussion I get into with people. It's like, oh, everyone says it's you want people to die, or
it's black and white,
or it's all justified.
You think that if opening businesses is going to kill everybody, when no, it's not necessarily the truth. The truth is, do it in as safe way as you can. You know what? Who cares what I think? Who cares what you think? Make it okay to have the conversation. That's the first step, because right now you get leaders like this Dan Andrews here who act like dictators, who just come out with changing legislation to give police all these powers, claiming that it's for our health and safety, but we don't dare discuss what we're actually doing and why, because that is wrong, and that you'll see that
it's subversive it's subverting the power of the state to be able to act with impunity and without any checks and balances.
Exactly. I think if we were allowed to have those conversations freely, suddenly a lot of those people who are sitting at home scared to death may be a little less scared, and also may realize that they're giving up all their freedoms for something that might not be exactly what they thought, or at least it wasn't worth giving their freedoms up for.
And I want to pull this comment up, because following orders are no defense. There's two things, and when it comes to police abuse, there are in my mind two types. There are strictly applying an unfair law, and then there is stomping someone's head, which is not even legal, but that's the other type of police abuse. So in Victoria, we're seeing two types now. The abusive arrests, I think, which go beyond applying the rules, is a form of police abuse, which you blame the police for. The ruthless and vigorous application of a government law is another one you can fault the police for, but that's one where I would tend to say you can't expect the police to defy the government that employs them. So that's where it's a political problem and not a police abuse problem, although they look the same.
Yeah, look, I agree with you to an extent. They also have discretion. And the problem that we're seeing at the moment here in Victoria is too often those guys on the ground are choosing choosing to go the hard route. Now, I don't know, is it just because there's a lot of power-hungry ones, or are we just seeing those ones? Like most interactions I've had with cops at the moment, but they know me and they're friendly and they're good and they like them and we're chill. But on that day that I was in the city and I got arrested, I saw something I hadn't seen before. I'd seen a kind of it was in the air even of this we're here to smash you kind of vibe. They've made an enemy of people that aren't really their enemies. And I think, again, I'll go back to saying that I think it's the natural reaction to the government giving them these sorts of powers and command, telling them that this is what we're going to do and we're going to smash them and I'll hype them up. And, I was in the army. I get what it is to to be given that talk and the orders and to be hyped up. But I also don't believe that, being given orders like that is an excuse for some of the behavior. You can actually do it in a way where you're following the orders, but not doing some of the stuff that we're seeing some of these cops actually do. And I think we just need a few coppers to actually stand up and say, I don't think it's right. In fact, I'm messaged a lot privately by cops here and cops around the country that are disgusted by some of the police behavior that we're seeing. So I bumped into a cop today who was telling me that it was ridiculous. He couldn't believe what he saw. I go, mate, join me at standwithavi.com.
That might be the perfect segue into the winding up portion. Here, I'm going to bring up a few super chats because it's not the end of the story, Avi. We're going to hear more about this.
Yeah, 100%. This is what I can say at this point is watch that site over, I would say, over the next few days. I don't know the timing exactly, but things are about to get very exciting.
Okay, we've got Susan M says, Brisbane checking. Glad I left Victoria. We need the spirit of Ned Kelly to rise up.
Tell Susan that I want to become a refugee.
We got Tambo Computing says the class action lawsuit by Victorian businesses will break the state and the Andrews reign of power. It's so, I mean, I say interesting from an unfortunate perspective. Like I'm getting a glimpse into, micro Australian politics, and it's very, very interesting. Steph says, I think China was selectively releasing those videos to make us feel like the virus was more.
I agree. Steph, I think I think there's something to what she's saying because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. And if you look at it, it just doesn't make sense. When we saw what was going on in Wuhan at the time and those videos, the ones that we were condemning, but it kind of created this sense of fear that when the virus finally got to us, it was like, oh crap, did you see what China did to be able to get over this? That it set the roadmap to lockdowns, and now suddenly they're cool, they're having full parties. So how does a country of 1.4 billion people get over it, but a country here of what 20 to 30 million people, we can't in more time than we've been longer than they have. We in Melbourne, we've been in lockdown for longer than Wuhan. So
Tambo Computing says Victoria Police was broken a long time ago. The Lawyer X scandal was proof of that. Ask Avi. I don't know what that is.
Interestingly enough, on that Lawyer X scandal was where they used a lawyer which is highly illegal, to be their informant. Lawyer X, they called the Lawyer X, who was the informant. In fact, a fun fact is that the cop that signed the warrant for the lady in Ballarat, I know I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but this is actually just fact. The warrant for the woman that you saw the video of her getting arrested in Ballarat, he slept with Lawyer X. Lawyer X was his informant. So there is corruption.
This might be a subject for another day. Avi, thoughts on Gladys in, I guess, New South Wales versus Dan and Vic?
I'm not the biggest Gladys fan, but I think that she's, you know what? She's promised not to do what Dan's done, and she's promised that for a long time, even saying that if it got bad, she wouldn't want to lock down because of the economic effect that it will have on the state. So I would prefer to live under her. Yes.
We got Susan says anytime Queensland is a place.
Susan.
And let's see, isolate those infected with the mycoronavirus, protect the vulnerable, and let the rest of us get back to work. It was something some people said a while back, which would have been the right way to protect those
exactly.
who in fact.
Well, it's the only thing. You know what? I in the beginning, like I have two family members, one in America, one in Israel, that both died. Now you say with or from the virus. Who knows? They weren't young. But I agree. I think the virus is a serious problem. But anyone who's worried, you lock down, and maybe even the government give them incentives to stay locked down if they want, But don't shut down the entire economy. Like it doesn't take much to see what that's going to do. And I think, especially in Australia, we're still in a relatively good position because the government's been paying everyone while they haven't worked. As much as it sucks to be home and not be able to go out, and mate, wait till those payments, those welfare payments stop. And all these people that were on $100,000 a year are suddenly on $14,000 trying to survive with their family. What do you think that's going to do to mental health of many fathers who suddenly can't provide proper food, can't provide what they were providing for their family? But we had the effects of this lockdown is only going to start to be felt in the next few years. It's scary to think where we're heading. Like, this is the kind of stuff that starts world wars.
Well, I'm going to be more optimistic than that, but you know that we're going to see this in years, if only from the incidentals of people not getting the medical treatment that they needed in the interim, psychological effects, generational effects on kids. We're seeing it, but I'm going to be more optimistic than that, Avi, because I don't want to end on that note, but we'll end on that note regardless. And I'm going to thank everybody for tuning in early, midday, and evening. Avi, stick around. We'll talk for a few more minutes afterwards. But everyone, thank you very much, Avi. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Standwithavi.com. Standwithavi.com.
Sign and share the petition, actually. Why not? And then once it'll change in a few days with the exciting update.
Okay, and I'm going to put the link in the pinned comment so you can all find it. Avi, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the day, enjoy the evening, depending where you are, and peace out.